Something happened this week in the world of film, and once again, it was politics that stole the limelight. But this time, it wasn't the BBC, and it also wasn't specifically here in Great Britain. It actually happened in the United States, and to be more specific, President Trump, who it now appears has his eye on the global film industry.
Earlier this week, The Guardian ran a panicked headline: Trump's movie tariffs are designed to destroy the international film industry.
And that's a bold claim, but beneath the usual hysteria is something worth paying attention to.
Because the Donald is promising to slap heavy tariffs on foreign entertainment imports to the US, from cars to movies.
Now, depending on your politics, this is either economic sabotage or economic strategy. But one thing is certain: if Trump's plan goes through, British cinema could take quite a big hit. But maybe, just maybe, that's the wake-up call that the industry actually needs.
It looks like the tariff situation will be wrapped up later today, so by the time you watch this, we may already have the answer. But I still think the points I'm about to raise are still valid.
Unless I can think of something very quickly.
Let's start with the facts.
Matron.
Britain does have a film industry. It's not what it once was. You might feel like we make fewer films, let alone great films, and well, that's fairly accurate. We actually still make hundreds of films here every year, mostly thanks to international investment. But one thing is clear:
we don't make culturally defining British films like we used to.
In 2022, the BFI recorded 220 UK qualifying feature films, down from 331 in 2019. Now, that might have something to do with COVID. What makes a UK qualifying film?
I have some extremely distressing news.
I'll leave a detailed definition in the description below, but essentially they just need to have something British about them. A British lead, or something to do with British culture or British history or something like that. To be completely fair, the industry does still bring in a pretty penny,
especially from streaming services like Netflix and Amazon.
In fact, Netflix alone has pledged over $1 billion in UK production spend,
building massive facilities like Shepperton Studios in Surrey, which is now part of the Pinewood Group. Pinewood, if you don't know, are a massive studio here in the UK. A lot of the original Star Wars practical effects were shot there, and they have just an absolutely amazing history.
But here's my point. These aren't specifically British stories. They're shot here. They probably employ a predominantly British crew, and this definitely benefits the UK film scene and economy.
But they're American productions. In other words, we've become the hired help.
A new bucket for monsieur.
Sadly, our national cinema, the stuff that's supposed to tell British stories, lost its cultural weight some time ago.
Of course, we still have blockbusters.
No Time to Die, the final Daniel Craig Bond film, made a staggering $774 million worldwide, including £96 million here in the UK. That's the third highest British box office of all time. It was filmed here, produced by Eon Productions, and filled with British talent.
But it was co-financed by MGM and distributed by Universal. I mean, Bond was still British, but only just.
And God knows what state Bond is going to be in moving forward.
We lose a life on that.
What's the biggest British associated film ever? Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. It made $1.34 billion globally.
Again, filmed here, cast here, based on a British book, but financed by Warner Brothers. Both are technically British productions, but they're now global franchises. They tell British-ish stories. Maybe I'm being too picky here, but I think that's the problem. A lack of solely Britishness in British film. And it wasn't always like this.
Back in 1949, Carol Reed released The Third Man, a shadowy, morally complex noir set in post-war Vienna. It's still widely considered the greatest British film of all time, and was voted as such by the BFI.
No billion-dollar box office, and obviously no Netflix deal, but it was still undeniably British in voice, tone, and purpose, despite it obviously being set on the continent.
Or look at Kes, Brief Encounter, The Long Good Friday, Train Spotting, films that felt honest, raw. They're cultural snapshots of Britain, a Britain we recognised, for better and for worse.
And where are those films now? Where's the modern day Lindsay Anderson or even Noel Coward?
Last night, Mr. Governor, my toilet was broken into.
Let's bring it back to Trump. If US tariffs are placed on foreign entertainment, and obviously we care about British-made TV and film, the UK does stand to potentially lose hundreds of millions of pounds in revenue. That's the fear. And it's a valid one. I think we've become too deeply reliant on international co-funding and streaming giants to basically prop up the industry.
But here's the other side of the argument, one that The Guardian won't touch. Maybe this is the kick we actually need. If British films can't coast into the US market anymore, maybe British filmmakers and studios will have to turn inward, make stories for us again.
We need to rebuild our national cinema. We need to make films that entertain, not just films that sell, but we need to find films that help shape and forge and even maintain the British experience. Because let's be honest, the problem with British cinema and television is not tariffs, it's timidity. It's reluctance and probably hesitance. That Trump's tariffs may not even happen. But the panic they've caused in the powers that be, on this side of the Atlantic, to me, show how fragile the UK economy actually is. Let's face it, if you're a decision maker over at Netflix, you're probably already regretting that $1 billion investment. I wouldn't be surprised if they're already trying to backtrack on that. Okay, I mean, they're probably not likely to pull out of the UK altogether, and I'm not really advocating for them to do that. But if they do, I would say that's pretty much the industry done. What does that mean for shows like The Rings of Power and the upcoming Harry Potter series? In actual fact, maybe Trump's doing us a favour with these tariffs. Personally, I think it's time we stopped relying on handouts from Hollywood anyway. No disrespect to our American cousins, but I think even you would agree that you'd like to see those great British classics return. Great films and TV shows are just that. They're great films and TV shows. We just need to get back to making and telling great stories, regardless if they're made in the US, the UK, in Asia, wherever. At the end of the day, Trump and the US are going to do what Trump and the US are going to do. But we here in the UK need to make British film and television something worth protecting, as well as something worth spending a fortune on to go and see at the cinema.